don't know.
Well, we're into the top two.
Top two.
What you got?
So number two is one you may or may not have heard of either. Aeon Flux.
Yes, I have heard of that.
Yeah. So that started the way I was introduced to that. This is the cartoon box set.
Right.
The way I was introduced to this on BBC Two, it was about, I don't know, 6 in the afternoon or 6 in the evening. There used to be this thing called liquid television, and this is going back again in the olden days, where it says that liquid television was an MTV thing, and it ran between 91 and 95. I don't know when they actually showed it on BBC Two. It was probably sort of a bit after or whatever. But I remember just flicking over and seeing this thing, and it was this collection of really crazy animations and like little short films, and a bit like, if you remember, MTV used to have the weird titles and stuff like that, like a funny thing happening, and then MTV came out. It was almost like an extension of that. And one of the regular featured parts of it was Aeon Flux, the sort of lady assassin. So that was how I sort of was introduced to that character, and just remember seeing these really crazy, this woman in sort of bondage looking gear shooting all these people and blood coming out and everything like that, and just being absolutely captivated by it. And yeah, this is the full series, from like the little pilots and sort of all of the animations that the guy did. Peter Chung is the gentleman who did it. But yeah, absolutely love it. For me, it's influential on me in terms of getting me into art and animation and all of that sort of stuff, and the whole futuristic vibe of it. And it's very almost sort of anime in its sort of like storyline and so on. But yeah, absolutely love it. Have you seen any of them?
No, I was going to say, I feel like I've heard the title. Has it been made into a film?
Yeah. So after this, they then made a film. I don't know when the film actually came out, but it had, who was the actress who was in it? It was in 2005. They made a film, and it was Charlize Theron who was in it, apparently. Yeah, I've never seen the film because I love the cartoon so much. I've never watched the film.
Would you worry that the film wouldn't do it justice?
Yeah, because it's just such it's quite, what's the word? It's quite an extreme cartoon, and not in the sense that it's very violent, but also it's just very just really visual. There are bits of like certain episodes start with like a fly crawling across her eye, and you see her eyelashes and stuff, or she'll sort of like, I'm people going to say, like, she'll kill someone and then sort of like lick them, and it's that really weird sort of extreme things that happen in it. And I'd worry that the film was too Hollywood, if you know what I mean. It's shiny and Matrix like, rather than taking away the things that make this really cool.
A good example of that, and I'll bring up a comment that we had from last week's show, which was about computer games to movies that haven't quite worked. One that you mentioned, I think, or Mark mentioned, which was Street Fighter, which Ryan, who sent in this question, completely disagrees with, thinks that it's an amazing film. I would argue that the manga version of Street Fighter, that was incredible. And for me, I remember watching the manga version first and was like, this is awesome. Then they brought out the, what do they call them? What do they call films with?
Live action.
Live action, that's it. When they brought out the live action version with Jean-Claude Van Damme and Kylie Minogue, I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
So disappointed. But on the flip side, Mortal Kombat was one that I remember seeing the real live action version first, and then saw an animated version, and the animated version wasn't as good. But maybe it's because, like you say, depending on what way you see it first, might influence. If you really enjoyed it.
Visually, the manga Street Fighter film looked like Street Fighter. You know what I mean? It was that in keeping with the style, whereas the Street Fighter live action film looked nothing like it. Like there was a I know, a similarity between some of the characters, but otherwise it was quite far removed.
And also, what I don't want to stick around this film too much, but what an opening to the film when you had "Blind" by Korn playing, if you remember, and you had wasn't it Ryu and is it Bison?
Maybe I can't remember.
Or Sagat. I can't remember which one it is. It's one of them. I think it's Bison anyway. But and he uppercuts him. But just from that music, and it was so intense because you had all the lighting, and you know it was really dark. They were out in this field. But the manga films, I think, they can be another level when it comes to animations anyway.
Yeah.
But that's an awesome pick for your number 2, mate.
I'll lend you it.
Yeah, and I will.
Watch it.
Watch it. No, please do. I will. My number 2. Yeah, once I remember, it's weird to say once I remembered watching this. I've got it as a box set. I watched it on TV before I watched it on DVD. But The Office, I could have picked pretty much any Ricky Gervais box set because I'm a massive fan of his. Mark actually recommended that I watch The Office when it started off. It was on BBC Two, I think. Not sure whether it ever actually went over to BBC One. It might have always stayed on 2, but I remember watching the first episode and thinking it was an actual documentary because none of the characters are in it you'd ever seen on anything else, or certainly I hadn't. And I was convinced that this was some wacky manager, David Brent, in an office. And obviously, as time goes on, you obviously understand it's not. But it's just one of the best series ever made, I think. And it's still, if you watch it now today, it's one of them ones where it's cringeworthy because of the character that he plays. But also, there's so many other things. And obviously, there's an American version of it, which went on a hell of a lot longer. I think that's like 9 series. The American one with Steve Carell as David Brent.
Yeah.
Or he isn't actually David Brent in that, but his character. But yeah, it's and I think it's still, you can watch that today and still it hasn't dated, if you know what I mean. It's still very, very funny. But just also
with The Office, the great thing is it does make you cringe and it does make you think, oh god, I can't believe that's happening. But there's, with so many in the characters, you've met people like that. It's as ridiculous as the situation is, it's still very representative of real life.
Oh yeah, definitely. You always had you're a Tim or you're a Gareth or whatever. You could associate, like you say, the characters with certain ones. You had wasn't it? He's the road agent, which was Chris Finch.
Yes.
Who's a famous actor. He does a lot of voiceovers for things, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And he was like the big shot, come in, give it large. And you always knew someone like that. And it's the same with a lot of shows. It's who you relate to, the in-betweeners. People always say there's certain characters, them, that's you, that's him, that's Steve, whatever. So I think that's, like you say, it's always relatability with a lot of these shows. And when it's set in an office, and it was probably around the you when we'd started working in an office environment. So you could again, you'd pick the similarities with it. And even now today, there's shows that I'll watch today and certain characters will remind me of people in that. You know what I mean? So it's funny. But yeah, that was my my number 2. But like I say, Ricky Gervais, my wife said to me, what about Extras? Because that was another, that was kind of, I think, his follow-up to The Office. For me, it doesn't beat The Office, but again, another one where it was...
It's good in it. It's good as its own thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think he's been pretty successful with his TV shows.
Definitely.